want to say that we're done with this, and let's wrap up tonight with our movie review. And
Yeah, sounds good. I need something to pep me up.
yes, and this movie definitely, well, maybe not in the beginning, but it definitely has a happy ending. For those of you who joined us for last month's theme, we decided to do another theme for November, and no, it's not hokey, uh, family movies or whatever. Although I did have an idea about maybe we could do it next year, uh, and do movies that depict family dysfunction.
Oh, I'm fine with that. That'll
Yeah,
work.
because because we decided to do in honor of one of the two holidays this month being Veterans Day. We decided to do war movies, specifically ones involving the United States. And so for our
Yep.
first movie, we are doing The Patriot, starring Mel Gibson and Heath Ledger.
Yep.
This movie is the main character that Mel Gibson plays is loosely based on a historical figure by the name of Francis Marion, and
Hmm.
he's actually considered the father of guerrilla warfare or maneuver warfare, which is like you don't no fixed positions, you're constantly on the move, hit and run strategy, that kind of thing.
Right.
And the Patriot just follows this character uh, from the beginning of from the beginning of the Revolutionary War all the way to its conclusion. And it's a really well done made movie. I think the art direction, to start off, I think the art direction was fantastic. You know, and just everything, like the lighting and everything, just made it perfect. Like I really felt like I was back in the 18th century. And it really, the movie definitely uh, had a realism to it.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's required. Well, back then when Mel Gibson was still hot shit, I was wondering if like he had he got it to be put in his contract that his characters had to be men of faith. Because if you think about it, his character of William Wallace, he portrayed him as a man of faith. This Benjamin Martin character, he was portrayed as a man of faith. The colonel in We Were Soldiers was a man of faith, or like a Catholic.
Right.
And so so I was kind of wondering if and there are and then and in the Patriot there is a scene of him in the church like praying. So I was wondering if it's if he if he got it to be where like you know if he was to be in a movie like the man had to be a man of faith, or at least in a war movie.
That's a great question. I wonder if that could be a strong possibility. Because yeah, he does. Definitely in that mid to late '90s on into the 2000s. Yeah, he was doing a lot of those type of films where the characters he were playing were very were men of faith. Um, so it's very. I mean, obviously, like Lethal Weapon isn't part of that,
Right.
but yeah, it's very possible that there was certain roles that he was doing. It's like, yeah, this needs. I'm a man of faith in this. Like that's what I'm gonna do. It's also too like true with that. Especially because this movie was made in 2000, which is one of our more recent film. A film that was made much more recently, but he was kind
20
of
years
like the,
ago, almost 20 years ago.
God, I can't believe that.
I know.
But that, he was, definitely an A-list actor back then. So
Oh
he
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of,
yeah.
he probably got a lot, he had his say on a lot of things.
Right.
So, yeah, is there, anything that you didn't like about the movie, about The Patriot?
I mean, I can't say that I, I do or I have any problems with this movie. Um, yeah, I mean, I think this was a very satisfying movie. I can't say that I was disappointed with anybody's performances per se.
Right.
From like even like the supporting actors. I thought it was they were pretty dang good. I mean, Tom Wilkinson as General Cornwallis, or Jason Isaacs as Colonel Taddington. Like he was so good. Like I like really like hated his guts.
Yep, me too.
Yeah.
um, I guess if there was, yeah, and this wasn't a this wasn't a bad thing for me, but I
hmm
guess some people might find this a little bit tough to watch, in the sense that it is a long movie. It's nearly 3 hours. And at times it does move maybe a bit slow.
Okay. Yeah.
But
Okay.
if I was going to make a criticism, but the characters themselves are quite compelling, and this is a story that it wasn't a it wasn't a movie that was drawn. It wasn't like a drawn out 3 hours. It wasn't something that's like, this movie could have been an hour and a half and I could have gone home.
Right.
It
No, like
was,
even though it
I
was
think all
long, I think it the pacing was well done.
right.
It didn't feel like yeah, because like you don't feel like that almost 3 hours. You don't feel it at all.
Right. This was not Barry Lyndon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This is a a very well paced film, and I think all you know, uh, 2 hours and 50 some minutes of it were necessary to
mm,
tell the whole story, to tell the story in its entirety in the right way.
right.
I don't feel like there was wasted scenes in this film.
No, not at all. Like, and I have to say, I really enjoyed Mel Gibson's performance as kind of like the kind of tortured, kind of tortured soul. He was like this, um, in the movie, the character that he played, had a bit of a reputation, and not a particularly good one, but it made him famous, and it made people, uh, I guess, respect him in a way.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, he was a war veteran.
right.
He was a his character was took part in the French and Indian War, and in that war, the horrors that he saw and inflicted upon others weighed on him and brought him a lot of shame and guilt. Well, even though it did make him famous and gave him a reputation among his peers, and why he was initially very hesitant to join up with the Continental Army to go against the British. He just like, I don't want to deal with war anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas and he never really shared what his issues were, and because of that, like his sons had that same fire that he used to have as a younger person, and they
Right.
wanted to go fight and rebelled against Mel Gibson's character, and that led to events that caused Mel Gibson to get involved in the conflict.
Right. Because I did see the dualism of his sons, and like the dual the 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 kind of not duality, but like the bifurcated nature within Mel Gibson, because I think his eldest son, played by Heath Ledger, Gabriel, was more of like uh, that the passionate side of him, you know,
Right.
and his other son, Thomas, I forget who the actor is, but Thomas is more of uh, the the duty aspect of Benjamin Martin's character, where it's like he's a dutiful soldier who he wants to go and serve and do his duty. And
Right.
you
Right.
kind of see that when you see Thomas go in and kind of sneak into his dad's room and then opens his trunk and he finds his old army uniform and then puts it on. Because I mean it's foreshadowed like crazy, but he's like, but Thomas like is always playing with these
Toy
toy
soldiers.
soldiers, and you could see that he desperately wants to be a soldier. And I
Right.
think but not that he knows like what his father's done, but he wants to be a soldier like his father was a soldier.
Right.
And so I think like that kind of like that dual part of him within Benjamin Martin, the character, like was seen within his sons.
Yeah. So that was so you had the character elements that were really compelling. You felt you felt you felt like the performances were very genuine.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, like the the quote unquote bad guys, like they made you hate them.
Right.
But it wasn't like it wasn't some cartoonish villain. Like they were just they had their reasonings too. But it's like, oh man, I just hate this guy. I can't wait for him to die.
Right. Because I'm even Jason Isaac's character, Colonel Tabington.
Hmm.
He was like this kind of brutal kind of like dickhead. He didn't take prisoners. He burned down houses. He killed livestock. He
Yeah,
was basic. He basically,
he broke all the
yeah,
engagements of
he
war.
broke all the rules of
He was not a
engagement.
gentleman,
Yeah, he wasn't a
right?
gentleman.
And
But
even
he
his peers didn't like him for that.
right. But but then you find out that he does this because even though he's from like this well-to-do family, his father spent all their money, and so he has to
Right,
like he has to regain his family's reputation, or he has to get some semblance of fame or honor uh, back for himself through his military career.
right. So if he feels that if he doesn't have victory, like he can't but he does it to regain that fear and respect that his family once had. So it wasn't like a complete he wasn't just evil for the sake of evil.
Yeah,
It
he
was
wasn't just
he
like
felt like
this
this is his way
cartoon
to.
like mustache twirling bad guy who was like this someone who was born with a silver spoon in their mouth and they just like have no empathy. But
Right,
he has very relatable motivations.
right. And yeah, so it's like I loved all the acting performances. The soundtrack was fantastic
Mhm.
in
Oh
the
yeah, by
Patriot.
John Williams.
Yep, exactly. And yeah, I don't really have a anything really bad to say about the film.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like I said, just uh, if you're gonna watch Patriot, which you all should, you know, make sure you got a few hours to relax, get that popcorn ready, and sit down for a great 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked how the obviously it's a historical fiction. It's set within kind of the um, it went through the course of the Revolutionary War, and but it also had a kind of a very pro-American message, but it wasn't a hokey message either.
Right. Because yeah, because there was like there was constant, and I think it was really smart of them to put this in, but like moments where like it kind of there was moments where it where the soldiers their resolve was tested.
Right.
One being like them being captured by a British ambush, and then the next the British Army finding out who they were and like targeting their families.
Right.
That was another one, and like and so there was a they. I'm so glad that they put in those moments where like it tested like the resolve of the soldiers, because it's a very real thing. It's a because these men, they were militia. They weren't regular army. They were volunteers. Um, so these men like they're really risking something by joining up.
Right. It's and any one of those things that tested their resolve, it could have been like, well, you know what, this is stupid, but it's like this is just too much. I can't handle it. But I think they all realized that something more important was at hand, and to have a real chance at liberty and freedom like they had never, thought about before, was too compelling to give up.
Right. I mean, yes, there were some deserters. I think a great scene was it was after that furlough that Benjamin Martin gave to his men to go take care of their families and make arrangements or
Right.
whatever. And then they come back, and then like one of the guys is already there, and they ask him, it's like, "Oh, anyone else been by?" It's like, "Oh, well, one guy was here. Uh, he looked around, but he didn't stay long." And it's like, "Oh, okay." And so they kind of like sit around the fire, and then all of a sudden, like you see these lanterns, uh, all these lanterns coming into view, and then like these boats, coming in on the water, where their base is kind of close to like a river, and then you see the men coming back on the boats, and then you see the men coming back, on horseback, and then you're kind of like, even though you think that it's just gonna be like, I think there was like three of them at the time. They thought
It's
that
like four would have been better than three, but we'll make do. And then
yeah, yeah,
but then
yeah.
everyone's trickle in. It's like you just kept all this like, oh man, like you felt pumped up, like
Right. You felt hopeful, and you felt like um, reassured, you know. And I think, I mean, they kind of added it in there because I think they had to, but like the whole race relation thing, where, where one of the soldiers is a black man, or like he was a slave, and he was signed over to the militia by his former master, and
yeah.
then what is it? And it was decreed that any black man, any like slave who serves a year within the army, or serves within the cause of this budding nation, then they would be granted
Mhm.
freedom.
Yeah.
And so like one of the guys, he was kind of like your textbook racist.
That okay, I yeah, that would probably be the one hokey moment if there ever was one
Right. But
in the
then
film.
yeah, during the ambush, he the black guy saves the racist guy, and then they become friends at the end.
Right, yeah, they respect one
Yeah,
another.
but I think it was done in a slightly smarter way, because like in the final battle, like they're standing shoulder to shoulder, and then it's like, oh, it's October now. It's like it's been more than 12 months. You're free. What are you doing here? And then
So now I'm fighting for myself.
yeah, now it's like yeah, but I'm here. Like now I'm here for me. And then so it's like, and so like they, he they have like this respect for each other, and it's like, yeah, I'm honored to have you here with us.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, I like the movie. I like the message it had. It was yeah, great. Like you said, great art direction, great soundtrack, good acting. It's if you're looking for a good Revolutionary War film, this is the one.
Right. Again, not 100% accurate, but
No,
getting that like getting that sense of like the the brutality and grittiness of like the old school way of doing war. This is the movie for you.
exactly, and they weren't going for 100% accuracy.
Right.
Obviously, they were. I think they were going more for the spirit of what men were fighting for back then,
Exactly right.
and that they captured 100%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Although like kind of one kind of hokey like saccharine moment that people might call upon, but I absolutely love is that scene when uh, you know Mel Gibson's character Benjamin Martin, he's about to go. It's at the end of that 1 week furlough that he gave to his men, and then he went to go see his family. He was about to leave, and like his youngest daughter like for some reason like didn't speak, but then like it was revealed sometime before that she was speaking now. And so like he's like saying goodbye to her, and he's just like wanting her to say like, oh, just speak to
Anything,
him, right? And she doesn't, because she holds this animus towards him because he's like gone for so long.
right?
And so like she like stubbornly like doesn't say anything, and you could see like in his face that he just wants to hear one word from his daughter. And so, but then she does, but she doesn't. And then so he's about, so he gets on his horse and starts his way back to the war. And then it just like finally she breaks down, like just like cries out, Papa, and like
Yeah, I guess that could be considered a hokey moment, but it was a touching moment at the same time.
I'm gonna be real, it gets me every single time. Because it's like and like she runs after him, and then she just jumps into his arms, and it's like, I'll say whatever you want, just stay, just don't go, stay, and just like, oh, good, right here, just right here.
Yeah, and especially with all the anguish that he's dealt with, his
Right.
wife's dead, his son was killed by the British,
Yeah.
and it's just like you need to have his daughter, who had been silent for so long, finally speak to him, was such a like that touched him like that gave him the resolve to continue on.
Right. Yeah. Oh man, it's just every single time.
Where I think it also, well, not that he not that that's not what he was going for, but I think it gave him the it's like, I have to make it back, for her.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's what he was
Because he makes a
fighting.
promise with her. It's like, oh, I'll be back, I promise. And so like,
Yeah,
yeah, it's just like one of those things where it's like, oh, I have to come back and I have to hear my daughter speak. And so it gives him that, it gives him just another reason to, make it back to her. Which is again just so touching. And I know it could seem a little hokey or hallmarky, but what
hey,
can I
you know what,
say?
every once in a while you need those moments.
I mean, I remember there was a time that I would just go on YouTube and watch those compilation videos of, the servicemen coming back home and like surprising their kids, and like the kids just like, breaking down and bawling their eyes out.
Yeah.
It just gets me every time, man.
You softy.
I know, I'm just a big softy.
So what's your rating for the Patriot?
uh, Definitely a 4. On a good day, I might say a 5, but that has to be like a very special occasion. But definitely a 4.
That's where I was gonna go with it too. 4. For all the reasons that we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, not a perfect film by any means.
Mm-hmm.
If it was more historically accurate, I may have gone a little bit more towards, and was still good like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would have gone towards the 5, but yeah, 4 is. I got to go with a 4-star myself. Um,
Yeah. I mean,
Great movie.
yeah, because I think what we might have problems with, I think those are more like nitpicks than actual like full 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 blown criticisms.
Exactly. This is not a film that I have like a ton of like, there's not like glaring plot holes or just characters just like, oh my god, just go away.
Mm.
Where the acting is terrible. It's like little things here and there, like, and that's because we're looking for that that perfect movie that and. But yeah, no, I had to say, yeah, I give it 4 stars. I think that's an appropriate
Yeah. I
rating.
mean,